Yo, this is Nefertiti and this is how I DJ. Okay, so today I'm mixing on two XDJ 700s on either side of the table so we can fit it all in. And then two CJ 3000s, pair on the left, pair on the right, and then my favourite Pioneer mixer, the DJM V10. Whole setup allows me to explore mixing on 6 channels as opposed to some of the other ones where it's just 4. So the first track on channel 1 is Breathing Air by Fela, and the plan for this in my head was to keep layering up consecutive channels to see how much I could add in without stifling it too much. There's a lot of melody in the Fela tune, so I would kind of just give the high mid a little boost just to try and accentuate some of the vocals and some of the pad work, and then layering in 4 tracks on top. So there's tracks by Isaiah, Gen Series, and releases on Gen Series label, and then going into a dubstep track by Basura, and that's called Hold Tight. And the plan with that is then you have all 5 channels up by the end of it, so it keeps progressing up every 8 bars, and then you introduce new stuff. And then taking out that track, the 6th channel allows me to transition, and then that's the kind of next chapter of the mix. So it goes from the introduction and it goes straight into the next track, and then fading out the Fela tune with ping pong delay just to kind of make it sound a bit more smooth and intentional. I'm focusing less on EQ and more on the beat matching being as precise as I can, because that ultimately is what can make it work and function across 6 channels. Because when you've got like 5 or 6 tracks up in the mix, if one's slightly off, the whole thing will sound like really clustered and busy, and then it sounds kind of like muddled. So it all starts with what I'd call like the anchor track, which is the Fela tune. Because if that's not in time, then everything else I'm beat matching to, because then I'll beat match channel 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So if the first one's not in, then by default, everything else is kind of out. And even if I line 5 up, there's one that the anchor track's out. So I try and get it as absolutely needle tight as possible. And then it's a bit of a like unorthodox technique, but I really try to, as quickly as possible for my ears sake and temporarily, I'll boost low mid, high mid and treble, or if it's on a 4 channel, just the high and mids. And then it accentuates like the percussion I need to hear, like the hi-hats, the snares, the kick drum, and I can just beat match it as absolutely crystal as I can. I think my first introduction to electronic underground music was probably through skateboarding, the skateboarding culture, like UK rap, UK hip hop, like Skinny Man, Task Force, Foreign Beggars. And then kind of at the same time then, as a sort of like byproduct of that, I kind of discovered grime. So I was kind of a fan of and really into grime before I was DJing it. And then I came across the Fabric Live mix CDs and then kind of discovered drum and bass, dubstep. But that was when I was about 15, so around 17, 18 years ago. I don't really know what I was trying to set out to do when I did this. I think I was just trying to see what was possible, because I think it was in 2016 or something that I first tried a reverse mix, like an old grime instrumental. But I just figured if you could chop 2 of the same track going forwards, then in theory you could do it in reverse. There's a slightly different pattern to it because the beat match doesn't sound right, if that makes sense. Because it's in reverse, you don't like officially beat match it, you just kind of get it where it sounds right. And it's almost a different beat match because you want it to swing into a kick or into a snare instead of them be on top of each other. They kind of need to have space to kind of move back and forth from each other. But I don't know, I just thought it'd be really cool. I don't know, I just figured one day I could try it. And I did it in the 6-deck mix where I went forward, reverse. And then I figured recently that if you were doing that, you could then, once you'd leave that part, the forward, reverse segment, you could then jump straight in on a third channel to another track. So I suppose what I'm always trying to do is always trying to like one up myself and always push myself to see, okay, so I've done that, then could I do this now, could I do that? And sometimes it doesn't work and it just sounds, it doesn't make sense, and you kind of realise you've gone over the limit of what sounds good. But in that case, I quite like that, because then it goes from a technical segment of maybe 16 or 32 bars in straight back into a danceable context. So that way it almost like justifies, and there's like a sort of A-B relationship between the technical side and then straight keeping it dance floor sort of ready and purposed. There was these DJ tutorials online, and I think some people kind of ridiculed the person because it was like an older man and he was kind of explaining it in a bit of a corny sense. But I saw a video that he did on beat matching and it just kind of then clicked and made sense in my head. It was like 2 race cars and one's maybe going faster, one's maybe going slower, and you want them to be at the same speed. I just kind of, that made sense in my head. But I think, I don't know, I used to stay up till like 6, 7 in the morning just mixing from midnight till 6, 7 a.m. till the sun comes up with my mates when I was like 16, 17. And we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were just having so much fun, you know? And I think when you're having fun, you kind of, without realizing, you just kind of start getting better at something. And then you just learn these little fragments of information, and that can completely revolutionize your understanding of DJing, whether it's just the idea of beat matching or why you would EQ something. But I suppose I grew up in that era when I was younger, where video content and video mixes weren't such of a sort of prominent feature. So you'd only listen to like, I don't know, like Youngster on Minimal Mondays or EZ on Kiss, or so I would only hear what they were doing. I wouldn't see it, so you couldn't really see the technique, you could just hear it. And it was only when things like Boiler Room and Keep Hush that kind of come to fruition, where you could kind of actually see maybe what was going on or how they were doing something. Probably felt a bit more of a open template that way, because there wasn't this sort of, this is how you do it in that sense. It was more just, you can just do what you want, and then down the line you could see how someone does it and then compare yourself instead of directly taking it from, if that makes sense. What I'm doing is I'm getting 6 of the same track, queuing them up at the same part, so just at 0, so it's just the first bar, and then I'm pressing play at different times with a delay between each channel, and then the order and timing of which I play that, press play on each CDJ, is what dictates the rhythm. And then once I've done that, I can beat match it to get it as clean as I can. So then you're creating, it's like someone said it's like live refixing, but it's kind of, I suppose it is that a bit, but it allows you to then create a new pattern on the dance floor, or maybe add a new rhythm, and then it kind of lends itself to other things. So in this case, I could have had like 4, and then I could have had a 4/4 track on this side. and I could be chopping it 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can almost change the context of a track's characteristics. So maybe a grime track that's quite skippy, you could turn it into a 4/4 sounding pattern to then layer it with a 4/4 track. So you can gel it in. It's like a gelling tool, or yeah, the possibilities are endless, but ultimately it just allows you to recontextualize the sound and pattern of a track. And it then kind of frees it up to not being, this is the track and that's all you're getting. It's like, well, it could be whatever you want in theory. It could be reverse, it could be this, or it could be that, it could be triplets. You can basically turn the track into whatever pattern you want that way. When I was on Represent, I kind of realised when I've had sort of my first proper like in-person radio residency, I played so much music out of Bristol. I was equally playing lots of stuff from London and inviting guests from London, but I've always been in love with the Bristol sound. You know, it's always blurred the line between grime and dubstep with people like Jemmy, Pinch, Carney, Joker. It's always been this grime dubstep sort of hybrid, and I think I was always really excited by that. It was kind of two of my favourite things in one, you know, it was always merged together. It's not to discredit, obviously, all the huge contributions that come from London and every other part of the country, or world even, but I think the Bristol sound always just resonated with me. And sometimes it's quite raw, it's quite gritty, but it feels very real. So I tried to learn piano when I was a kid, but I never learned to like separate my hands so one can play something and well, the other hand can play something else. They both have to do the same thing at the same time, and I've never been able to shift it. Like my dad was really good at playing piano, but I can't break it. But it almost works in my favour, I think, in this context, because then I can slow two tracks down at the same time, and because they're almost in sync with each other, they stay in time. Obviously, you've got to kind of do it the same motion and kind of get it right. But what I'm doing there is like, if I speed it up to +6 or whatever it might be, when it comes to like a more ambient part of this, like the breakdown or the pad or something, there's like a bit more of emotion in it. I feel like I can extract a bit more emotion and a bit more soul out of it and make it more of a moment. And even just like room to breathe in a set, you know, if like a crowd's dancing around loads and jumping up, you can kind of then just give everyone a breather and then go back up on the 16 when it drops again. But slowing it down from +6 to -6, it just kind of sometimes, not every track, and it depends on the frequencies and the melody and the key of the tracks, but if you slow it down, I feel like I can just pull out a bit more soul and emotion of it and make it a bit more of a sort of big moment in the mix. Stay authentic to yourself. And I know that sounds quite loose, but I think at the core of what I'm saying is that it's easy to kind of get carried away and feel maybe in the DJ world that you've got to follow a certain technical standard. But I think the main thing is just keep, like I kind of metaphorically call it, like putting logs on the fire, in the sense that you kind of want to keep your fire and your love for music or your craft, whatever it is, creative craft, burning, and just make sure that the goal is something that you actually are in love with instead of maybe just an achievement, because an achievement isn't what's going to keep you going, because then if you get there and you've achieved that thing, then there's nothing more to do. It's kind of, you know, you reach the top of your achievement and then you're kind of left there working out what you're trying to do. But if you can always peel back and retain that you're doing it for the love of what you're doing, then I think that's the main thing, is just staying in love with your craft. And even if you're pursuing technical stuff, as long as you're really enjoying that process, then I think that's got longevity to it. And I think naturally the technical stuff will flourish because it's coming from a place of love instead of a place of pressure.